And there was another statement that Blair Way, the CEO, said that stood out to me just reading this the other day. To put it into perspective, if I said we have identified 10 million ounces and the grade is about 2 or 3 ounces per tonne, you'd say, shit, that's pretty significant. So
that's come from the CEO of this company on a project that doesn't even have a resource.
Yeah, it's still very early
sure
stage.
You're not allowed to do that.
Maybe Canada's a bit different to Australia, mate.
Right, g'day Money Miners. Thursday, 13th of April, daily news. Welcome to the show. We've got Leo Lithium. They've put out some further drill results for their project in Mali, and we've got Andy Clayton from Precision Funds Management that's going to give us some expert insight into this project. Now, another lithium hopeful, a big-time news item that is getting plenty of attention. Patriot Battery Metals. They've provided an update on environmental and PFS activities for their Corvette lithium project in Quebec. Trav, JD, how are we, gents?
G'day, mate.
Doing well.
I'm well too.
Now, I don't know if you're struggling with things, running errands and everything. If anyone has a mobile hairdressing salon that can come here, because we're working flat stick and I haven't even got time to fuel up the car, I need a bloody haircut. So you boys seem all right.
I've got a pair of clippers, Matty. I can give you a cut.
I think that we're getting to that stage, and it's now that we're on camera, I'm a bit conscious of it. So look, everyone do take pride in my appearance, but we're bloody strapped for time. She's all going Money of Mine headquarters. Right, we've got a special guest today, friend of the show. You would have heard him a lot previously, the battery metals guru, and now, and also one of the top dogs at Precision Funds Management to talk about Leo Lithium's announcement today. Andy Clayton, welcome to Money of Mine, your first appearance, mate. How are you?
I'm ecstatic to be invited on, mate, and yes. Good to chat again.
Well, Andy, I got a confession. It was actually, the work you were doing with Matty that was the inspiration from my side, at least, to have a crack at a bit more financial commentary blended with Matty's great ochre tonality.
Yeah, I love those episodes you guys did as well.
Oh, jeez, Clay, let's talk about bloody...
got some
pumping
fans.
the tyres up before they smack me down on something. That's old school broking, mate, 101.
God, Clay to be walking around. TK will notice your shoulders back to Savi walking around with a bit of Conor McGregor swagger after that sort of compliment.
That's right.
Right, Clay, so we thought we'd get you insight about Leo Lithium, mate. They've released some further drill results today, which will potentially expand their mineral resource estimate. Now, before we get into it, I just want to highlight the peer comparison. So they've got a 50-50 JV with Ganfeng, so they've essentially got 50% of their resource. Their resource size is equivalent to Liontown and their grade, but they're pretty much valued at 1/6 of what Liontown is. So, look, going to Leo, where they're at, the trucking, give us the spiel, Clates.
Yeah. Oh, look, they, since Simon Hayes sort of taken over that and they spun out a 5-inch, I think they've done a sensational job in developing the project forward. And these latest set of results out today just really confirm what I think, most people know is that this is a tier 1 asset. You're getting really good widths of high-grade mineralisation when you're getting things like 115 metres at 1.7%, 71 metres at 2%. The resource is clearly going to grow. They've already got enough for, a 15 to 20-year mine life. And you can see from the sections that they put in there that some of this stuff's down dip of the current resource, and there's also looks like there's some new areas as well. So, there's some of the best looking sections you'll see with, great thick widths, true widths of 60, 70 metres at very good grade. So it really, sets it apart. And, I think most brokers out there, certainly the ones that cover the story, would have a valuation, significantly high, well in the north of, north of $1. And I suppose the big discount is A, they've sort of the country where they're located, which is obviously Mali, and B, they got 45%. In recent weeks, we've seen the Albemarle indicative offer for Liontown, and that's, they got 100% of that, valuing that undeveloped project at $5 billion sort of thing. But on a pure technical basis, you could certainly line up these two projects and arguably, Leo Lithium with an open pittable project is probably less risk than, the 4 million tonnes of underground that Liontown are looking at developing. But obviously, country risk is a big issue for investors, and I think really, in my view, what the market is waiting for is they have talked about this DSO opportunity, which they're targeting for second half of this year, and they put out an announcement the other day where they're, because Mali is landlocked, as we know, so your closest port is Dakar, which is 1,600 kilometres away, or down through the Ivory Coast, and Abidjan's about 1,000 k's, and they talk about a new one potentially to the west of Abidjan called San Pedro as a second port, which is 950 kilometres away. So I think what the market wants to see when they can develop this option, and they talk about it quite extensive in the announcement of a couple of weeks ago, that they can truck this thing out and that it's going to be successful navigating the roads. And I've been to Abidjan, and like the infrastructure in there is pretty good. Like their dual lane highways, an old company who could go build a gold mine there called Bonacro, it's still operating today. So there's lots. It's not, there's Africa and this is certainly one of the better, more developed countries, along with Senegal. So everyone sort of just lumps Africa into one basket, but my view is, they will be successful. I think Simon's an A-grade operator, going about it in a very measured approach. And I think once they can start demonstrating that in the second half of this year, that, getting revenue from DSO, and then the longer-term project, you saw their DFS announcement, where they're talking, billions of dollars of NPV at significantly less prices than we're targeting that are currently being experienced. So I think on all measures it's cheap. It's about execution over the next sort of 6 months.
Clayton, what do you reckon about CapEx in Africa? Where does that sit? Australia, I see, is the top end of CapEx. Asian countries appear to be able to do it a bit cheaper. Where does Africa sit for CapEx?
Yeah, look. But they certainly have, we've seen it in the gold miners at the moment, the ones that are operating there. They haven't seen the sort of the inflationary pressures that a lot of the Aussie golds have, and sort of the capital intensity for a Leo project, because it is open pit. It's I think it had increased, but not to the same extent. They're sort of targeting a 4 million tonne, I think, or 3 million tonne initial operation to expand it. But if you look at Liontown, they've gone from sort of 450 to plus 800 sort of thing, whereas Leo's has gone up to about, I think, 270, 280, maybe a smidge more. And there is a small sort of funding gap there, but you got to remember the original deal they did with Ganfeng was funding the bulk of that capex for farming in on that joint venture. So I don't think you certainly don't see the inflationary pressures that we are seeing in Australia on the capital costs, and but there's obviously other factors to take into account as well.
Yeah, we just had a question, Andy. I think you've touched on it quite well regarding the trucking that the company sort of discussed last week with the announcement.
Yep.
So it looks like the market's discounting them and perhaps not fully appreciating that they'll sort of get this done. Do you think it's something that they can get completed and then the market will sort of appreciate and look past the fact that they've got to truck it either through Côte d'Ivoire or Senegal? Like, how big of an issue do you sort of see this being going forward?
Oh, look, I think in the market's eyes, I think they view it as, I think the market sees it quite a big issue. But the reality is, I think they can be successful, and I think the way that they're going about it in terms of starting off on the DSO and just getting that all those logistics sorted out, will give the market a great deal of confidence for the ultimately the concentrate option that they're looking at developing, sort of thing. So, and they're yet to put out any sort of firm metrics. It's more sort of indicative type costs, but they should, these spodumene prices, they should be making very good money. And I think once they start generating cash flow, then the market will go, tick. We're happy to, that's certainly a de-risking event, and we're happy to back them, and and I would expect them to appreciate on the back of that sort of thing. Absolutely.
Clayton, do you have any speculation? I mean, the Firefinch story is a pretty interesting one, and obviously they're got a large chunk of Leo shares. Any speculation on how that's all going to unfold, given their suspension and process that's ongoing there?
Yeah, look, I mean, they had their annual report out the other day, Firefinch, and they talk about sort of, they're looking at all options, and that's their sort of their obviously a strategic stake. I think they what do they own of it? Yeah, 17% of Leo sort of thing. Is that a precursor to someone maybe getting a stake of that and lobbying something? Who knows? Or is it just because the offtake's already dealt for the bulk of it, but I don't think it's dealt for stage 2 of it, sort of thing. But high quality projects. Would someone be interested in that? Absolutely. What price? That when Firefinch was still sort of listed, they were looking at doing a sort of an emergency capital raise at 5 cents, and that was really underpinned by their Leo Lithium stake in that. But so there's all market rumours, everything. Does Ganfeng buy them? Do they really need to own 100% to get it all? Possibly not, but to get all the offtake, which is what they're really interested in. So it will be fascinating to see how that stake unfolds, and really the Firefinch board that they've said they're committed to finding the best value for shareholders. They're still looks like they've still got about sort of 30 odd million in cash, just judging by the accounts. But they're in the process now, sort of thing. But there's been no firm announcements in terms of indicative offers or anything like that at the moment.
Yeah, Clayton, 2 years ago, you were probably happily confined in your office and having lunches in West Perth. Did you ever think that after this introduction to me, you'd be regularly required to chime in on podcasts, this new obligation you've got? What do you can see how your life's turned around?
Oh, it's just been a wonderful revelation. I get so many compliments and things from all the fan base out there. It's all
Clayton, unlike us, we've got faces for radio, unlike you, so we'll have to get you on the video content sometime soon.
Because the boys are asking.
I've definitely got a face for radio. Don't worry about that.
The boys are talking about how we're going to do all these video interviews and all this. I'm like, Clayton and we're just going to be so lapping that up. I can't wait to break the news to them. So enjoy the audio while we've got it.
Yes, maybe Timothy certainly got a face for the video, but us older gentlemen probably prefer the radio. I think it's all. My partner in crime Dermot used to do sort of a weekly podcast with Westos, I think it was with NAB. So we might have to roll him through into the videos as well, mate.
Yeah, very good.
Absolutely.
Good on you, Clayton. Thanks very much for your take, mate. We really appreciate it, and it won't be the last.
Boys.
Thanks, Clayton.
Cheers, guys.
Right, good on you, Clayton. Bloody legend, great friend of the show. Can't wait to. Oh, geez, we might be moving into the top of their building, lads.
Good insight from
I forgot to hit him up if that room's still available.
Oh, mate, I think that's a good spot. And we're open-minded about having the perspectives of other fundies who are interested in the resources space share their insight and thoughts on our show.
Precision definitely have taken they're like sort of front runners. For
100%.
But happy
Early movers.
Happy to for other companies to come in and try and battle as top fundie on Money and Mine. So Precision have got it at the moment. So yeah, definitely interested in that Leo Lithium project. As I said, that price comparison always gets me just on pure market cap and resource size. And what we didn't mention, that their resource is equivalent to Liontown at the moment, but that will further. So they've got another mineral resource estimate coming out, which you'd anticipate is going up and up and up again. So it'll be interesting to see if they finally ever get proper value for their project. Very similar to West Africa Resources and Capricorn, don't you think?
Yeah, Liontown quite a bit closer to first production. That probably plays into that as well. But you're right on the point of the discount for country risk.
Yeah. All right, let's get on to Patriot Battery Metals. Been in definitely the big talking point. So like massive, thick, high grade lithium intersections. It's in Quebec, right next to a lake. It's a very interesting project. JD, they've released an update on the environmental and PFS activities. We've got a lot to go through in this. What's your take on it?
It's a really interesting story. So we're going to just start with a bit of a company overview to sort of set the scene and make sure we're all on the same page. So like you said, the Corvette project is their main asset. This is a hard rock lithium. asset in the James Bay region up in Quebec in Canada. So the project sort of sits along 50 kilometres of strike, and they've got various prospects all named CV1 through to 50.
So CV must be Corvette.
Yeah, that's right. So CV5 is the focus, and the company has flagged the ultimate goal of connecting a lot of these prospects, as a lot of them are outcropping, and they think they all are part of the same system. So we'll sort of see how that unfolds. The non-exec chair of this company is Ken Brinson, so familiar to a lot of the Australian investor community, former boss of Pilbara Minerals, and the company's now capped at Canadian $1.6 billion. So they've had a really huge run over the past year. And of course, in December, they listed their CDIs out here in Australia. So,
right, JD, explain what a CDI is for the non-finance folk and me.
It's a CHESS depository interest. Essentially, it means the shareholder in Australia, in this case, has the right to a share in the company. In this case, the main listing is on the TSX, and I think Patriot also have a listing over the counter in America as well.
So you can the value they've got in Australia is 10% of what the total company value is on the ASX.
It doesn't work like that. No, it's the CDI will have an exchange ratio back into it. I think in this case it is a 1-4-10 share, but the number of CDIs on the ASX is not forever equal to 10% of the total issued capital.
Yeah, that's why you'll notice the share price when you compare the price of the Canadian and the Australian stock. It's a dollar something in Australia, and I don't know, 14 or something odd dollars in Canada. So moving on to the operational side of things, they're building an 80-person camp. They're after the authorization to build an all-weather road, as this is an area that can be pretty locked off through winter, and they're moving into a hydrogeological program and really focusing on getting a PFS out by mid-2024. So it really sounds like winter hasn't slowed them down over there. They've got 6 rigs active and they're just churning away. So we're expecting CV5 to have a mineral resource estimate out by this quarter, so over the next couple months. So our eyes are peeled for that one. And on cash in the bank side of things, they raised 50 million Canadian recently. And with a lot of in the money options, they're sitting at roughly $80 million Canadian in the bank. So there's a couple areas that stand out, I think, to all of us that we want to unpack. Firstly is that listing structure, which you sort of touched on there, Maddie. So this is a company that's dual listed, and the stock is really strongly supported in Australia. And I think that speaks to the Australian market understanding lithium assets. So I think a lot of Canadian investors might be scarred by Nemaska, North American Lithium. These are 2 examples of companies that went into bankruptcy. North American Lithium has now been scooped up by Sayona and Piedmont in a joint venture. So
it's just restarted.
Yeah, exactly. Just last week, I think we covered that one. So it really speaks to the Aussie market's familiarity with these sorts of assets. And it's interesting for a company that's primarily listed in Canada. The second bit that really stands out to me is the environmental and social side of things. So if you haven't done so already, jump on their website, and the first thing you'll see is an absolutely gorgeous view with helicopter or drone flying over what they call the outcropping strike of the ore body up in Quebec in the James Bay region. And it's just gorgeous. The company will be pretty quick to flag that there are a lot of other projects in the area. You've got Allchem, Critical Elements, Lithium, like we just said, Sayona also in the area. So I think that really is highlighted by the company very regularly coming out with environmental updates on the social permitting side of things. And I think, Maddie, you had a few more points to touch on there with regards to how it's sort of broken up geographically across Canada and in particularly in Quebec with the different regions, and how that sort of sits with the Inuit communities and how you sort of go about licensing over there.
Yeah, I found this on the net, the native title arrangements. It sounds like they approved a heap of hydro power facilities in history, but didn't properly consult the native title owners.
Who did?
Quebec government.
Yeah.
And they, from this, these become this category 1, 2, 3. So you'll see the thing of brought up on the screen. So the dark red is category 1, light red is category 2, and then everything else is category 3. So essentially category 1, native title own the land. Category 2, the native title owners, local communities have to be consulted and compensated for things to be developed on that. And category 3 is owned by the government of Quebec, and they can authorise development projects without consulting the nearby communities and landholding corporations. So that green box is where the Corvette project is. So, but you look at that yellow one on the edge, that was our Alchem's James Bay project, which took 5 years to get approval for. So that you can see that's right on the edge of a category 2. So that whether that was a reason why it did take a bit longer. So there's, I suppose that's, this thesis is in support of the environmental side being an easy permit. But as you said, that flyover, JD, you look, there's that beautiful lake, and the outcropping pegmatite is right on the bank of it.
It's a good-looking lake that I'd want to protect if I lived nearby it.
Oh, but even just the water, whether the groundwater coming through there, and God, if the bloody one of the high walls burst and let the water in there, like it's just is right next to this.
So I think the company's going about that the right way. They're doing the hydrogeological testing that speaks to the groundwater issues they might face. They are doing the environmental permitting, the social licensing, as highlighted by the announcement they've come out with. So I think they are going and trying to check all these boxes and doing the right things in terms of getting those approvals, which are really key in this area.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Chalice. You have this, enormous, well, potentially enormous. I'm speculating here. You have what seems to be a pretty substantial discovery, and the market seems to think so by the fact that it's valuing it at 1.6 odd billion Canadian. And Chalice is not dissimilar because it's a massive discovery, and they're both seemingly in beautiful areas, both in mining jurisdictions. Don't get me wrong, but the actual pathway to turning this from a discovery into a mine is going to be long and complicated, marred by the fact that there's this environmental overlay that's exacerbated because it's beautiful and it's ecological and there's a whole bunch of biodiversity going on there.
Oh, even though Quebec, if this is a category 3 and Quebec own it and don't need authorisation, I would assume there's still a risk that there would be a lobbyist of some sort that will come and put their 2 bob in and get in the race. I'll be interested to see if it is as seamless and easy as it appears.
Yeah, I think it's a prime example of what the sort of NIMBY type people will be debating over the coming years and what we'll be debating over the coming decades, with society's sort of need for all these critical minerals and not wanting to develop the assets. So it's the trade-off as society we've just got to speak about.
They're definitely pro development of these with the Canada's view on the critical minerals strategy and everything.
Yeah, I think Canada's an interesting one. It can be really state by state and province by province.
But I think even county by county, like within the province, like depending on the county within the province, I know, especially that's in USA as well, really dependent on the very, very small areas.
And Australia is not too dissimilar. We've got, states such as Victoria where it's a lot harder to develop an asset in comparison to parts of WA.
Well, you look at the scale of this deposit. So we're getting hits of 131 metres at 1.96%. They've released like these high grade portions of it. So 25 metres at 5% lithium. So, and considering pegmatites can only be, spodumene can only be 8%. That is as high as the lithium content goes. So 5%, you're heading towards pretty much pure spodumene.
In all fairness, do we know if that's true width? I mean, we haven't seen cross sections.
Exactly. And this is where I was leading to. So we look, they could have just drilled that right through the strike of the ore body for all we know. But there's bugger all cross sections being given out on the announcements, and everyone's probably the scale of how big this is and the grade is probably getting lost. So look, Canaccord, they've put out their estimate for the resource estimate, the back of the envelope, conceptually was 148 million tonne at 1.14%. Macquarie put out 136 million tonne at 1.13%. So considering Liontown is 140 million tonne at 1.4%. So the grade they're estimating the grade to be considerably lower, which is probably not what the retail investors are actually thinking this stock's going to come out with. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's super interesting how that ties into what sort of processing facilities are needed going forward. We've seen the company flag that these high grades lead to higher recoveries, lead to having a DMS circuit that perhaps doesn't require flotation and can potentially be lower cost. We've seen the company in their latest announcement highlight the words low capex, low opex potential project. So
does that seem like a fair representation based on your read, JD?
I mean, just looking into the numbers that various analysts have sort of thrown around, touching on, like you'd said, Matty, before, Macquarie, they're throwing around a number of $800 million of upfront capex. I don't know about you guys. That's not super low cost in my eyes.
That's what Liontown are doing. That's what Liontown's capex is. That's bloody high.
Yeah, and that one's had 4 increases since they came out with that in 2021. So it'll be super interesting. This is, of course, a asset that's not even in resource yet. They haven't had the PFS come out. So any potential capital expenditure would still be years away. And there was another statement that Blair Way, the CEO, said that stood out to me just reading this the other day. To put it into perspective, if I said we have identified 10 million ounces and the grade is about 2 or 3 ounces per tonne, you'd say, shit, that's pretty significant. So
that's come from the CEO of this company on a project that doesn't even have a resource.
Yeah, it's still very early
sure
stage.
You're not allowed to do that.
Maybe Canada's a bit different to Australia.
Yeah, because you're inferring potential resource estimates without having a resource estimate.
Yeah, and in previous shows, you've highlighted, Matty, how difficult it can be to compare gold to lithium assets.
I tried, and I tried to do pure grade conversion and cost conversion, but it wasn't received too well because payabilities are so different and the contracts are so different. The only way you can appear to do it is just purely based on revenue.
Yeah, and I think why he's made this statement is coming back to an issue we touched on earlier, the significant proportion of shareholders that sit in Australia. He has sort of identified the North American market as a market that's familiar with gold and a market that's not so familiar with lithium. And I think he's really tried to put it in perspective for those investors over there to sort of get investor and shareholder buy-in. But yeah, it's obviously not apples for apples comparing the two.
Is that when he said shit, when you said shit in that quote, was that not, did he not say, he said
it was a bit more colourful, but I thought I'd tone it down a little bit.
So the other word was there, right? That's interesting. I just can't, when they're talking about the high grade, how the processing will be different because it's high grade, it won't need as much processing, but then you've got Macquarie and Canaccord predicting a 1.1 to 1.2% grade, so that isn't high grade.
I think with 2 of the 3 of us here coming from a sort of banking background as well, I think we should flag it's always important to take equity research reports with the pinch of salt and do your own research as well and sort of put it in perspective and obviously assess any conflicts of interest out there. But yeah, they're obviously estimates for something that hasn't even come out yet. So we'll sort of see how that plays out on the resource front.
I can add a little bit of commentary there. I mean, by all accounts, this is a substantial discovery. Yeah, I mean, we don't get, even if that's not true, it's still pretty amazing results, right? So by all accounts, it's a substantial discovery. But I think what the 3 of us collectively take issue with here is what appears to be very pumpermental marketing coming from the company. And that's, take example, that quote from the CEO, the fact that we don't get cross sections, and thirdly, the fact that we get plenty of photos of drill core in every announcement instead. So that sort of market behaviour is not indicative of a company with a market cap of $1.6 billion. And AFR has rumoured that there's been several global mining majors that have taken an interest in this asset. rightfully so. These hits are great, right? Let me tell you, like whenever the BD teams of those companies take a look at this sort of market behaviour, that is a massive red flag to them.
And didn't you say, Trav, you can actually download the drill data in a file and extrapolate that into a cross section?
Look, they do have a zip download on their website if you want to do the work and bring up everything and leapfrog yourself. It's a fair bit of work. It's not that hard to just put some cross sections in your ASX announcements.
Yeah, and I just see this as it's definitely a risk to flag for this mineral resource estimate based on the fact that no cross sections have been provided. This mineral resource estimate just might not come back as good as everyone thinks. Who knows? But it's definitely a risk. So it'll be definitely one to watch when this first initial resource estimate comes out. So,
100%. We're going to keep covering this. I think it's a super interesting project.
Well, this is, as you said, we haven't done ourselves any favours. We're sort of committed to doing this every day, and we haven't scheduled many days off. So we haven't even done a 5-day week yet because I had public holidays. So
just don't say that.
Next week's going to be a bloody ripper. So, no, good stuff, lads. Good recap. I think that's enough on Patriot.
Perfect. Should we get into a recap of all the other news overnight?
There's been a bit going on. 98% of Oz Mineral shareholders voted in favour of the BHP takeover this morning. So, and Oz have declared a fully franked dividend of $1.75 a share. So we're keen to see when that fully goes through. Nothing happens quickly with BHP, no mind. So, Great Boulder Resources, GBR, they had high-grade results from their Mulga Bill asset out near, which is a stone's throw from West Gold's Mill out near Meekatharra. Hey, if you didn't hear it yesterday, head back and listen to our chat with West Gold MD Wayne Bramwell. Very insightful chat. We're probably going to have one person on a day at this rate. We're getting pretty popular. Now, Great Boulder, their entitlement offer is closing tomorrow, Friday. And as their MD, Andrew Patterson, put a little announcement out on LinkedIn, said it's been available for 3 weeks, so don't hit him up on Monday when it's closed. So just a note there. Caravel Copper, they released a PFS processing update. Genesis and St. Barb's, they've extended their suspension until Monday, 17th of April. That is going to be a very interesting one to see if what is recut in that merger deal based on the debt and performance triggers that St. Barb have hit. We've also got Resources Minister Madeleine King making comments. JD, you've flagged this one from your financial media reading addiction. What's happening here?
Yeah, I think that one's really interesting to sort of see the deglobalization sort of playing out. We'll sort of see how it looks going forward, but countries obviously wanting to be closely aligned where they source their materials from. Had huge news on the macro front with the IRA legislation coming out of America. So I think it's just one to really watch, seeing as a huge amount of processing in all commodities is done in China. It's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Now, a lot of stock has been changing hands at Jevois as well. Their Idaho cobalt operation, that was put on hold. So a lot of 40% of shares on issue have been changing hands. Who's I think that's one
take
on that.
That's one we'd sort of picked up. We'd been discussing about 2 weeks ago. They came out with the announcement to put their operation there on sort of hold as it was sort of nearing the end of construction. And yeah, the share price I think was off 93% over the past year or so. So there's a bit of movement on the register. We'll be interested to see who's been collecting and who's been selling.
Then you got Goulamina going into suspension. So they've got the lead project, the Abra lead project. They went into a trading hold pending an operation update for Abra on Friday. So
yeah, I think that speaks to what Trav highlighted in that excellent episode a couple of days ago, which you should go and give a listen regarding the sort of Lassonde curve. This is a company right at the tail end of that coming out. They're ramping up production. They've just constructed the processing plant and getting into mining. They'd shipped their first ore a couple of weeks back. So interested to see what the announcement is when that comes out over the next few days.
It's generally not a good sign when you go on suspension on ramp up.
Yeah. Now, Hot Copper, we only received positive comments yesterday, which is not good for content. So,
Really?
Yeah. So we can't do a comment of people ragging on us because there hasn't been any yet. So
Not doing
either
something
we're
right.
improving or we're not getting the reach. So look, haters, can you please get back involved? So we've got some hilarious things to share on the episodes. So too easy.
Cheers, guys.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Hey, we've got a pub lunch at 3, so we've got to get this out and get into it, eh? BD work.
That's the way.
Righto. Cheers, money miners. Have a good one.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation, and needs.